Good, guys? Welcome back to Behind the Dugouts. And we've done it. We're through into the semi-finals, facing Thiago Silva and his Fluminense side. And what a game that was to watch. Both teams putting everything on the line, going at it from minute one all the way to minute 90. And I have to give credit to Palmeiras. They are a very, very good outfit. They've got quite a few technically gifted individual players. One of them, which we'll speak about a little bit later, that is now going to be moving over to Chelsea in Estevao Willian. They didn't bow down. They didn't just sit back and, try and soak up pressure and not to concede a goal. They came in with a game plan. They wanted to sit deep, but hit us on the press really aggressively once we hit that halfway line. And their counter attacks were done with speed, accuracy. The technical players, the wide players, even their forward man was giving the back line a run for their money. But I have to admit, on the most part, especially in the first 45 minutes, I felt that we dealt with everything that they could throw at us. I thought, the back line marshaled all their attacks into nothing. I thought Sanchez had a very, very good game, which, we always are quick to criticize him when he's had a poor game, but when he's had a good game, we have to give him his props because he was claiming crosses, his distribution was good, he looked confident, even his ball playing ability when he's had players pressing him and putting him under pressure, he still did it with confidence and with ease. So I have to give him his props. He did do very well, and that goes across the whole back line. Now, Estevao did cause us some serious problems, and of course, I could picture it. I should have put a bet on it. I knew he was going to score. It is just classic Chelsea, and I feel like this tournament has been quite a reunion tournament. We've come up against a lot of ex-players in Giroud, in Jorginho, and obviously we've come up against Estevao. Though he's not an ex-player, he's going to be making the move. It just seems like we were coming up against a lot of teams with ex-Chelsea or Chelsea or soon to be Chelsea players with a point to prove. And it is just written when these type of players come up against us that they are going to produce something. And obviously Estevao took that yesterday, and I have no problems with the way that he celebrated. I'm annoyed that he scored, of course, because, I would have liked an easier or a smoother run into the next round, but he made it interesting. And we've got to talk about that finish. It was spectacular, and he better be doing that for us next season. And it was good to see him. Obviously, I've watched some of his games in the FIFA Club World Cup where he's played against obviously the likes of Porto and things like that. But it was nice to see what he was going to do against the Premier League side, coming up against his, new teammates or soon to be new teammates. Did he look like he lacked confidence? Absolutely not. In the first sort of 5 minutes, he was getting the ball down on the right hand side, squaring up Cucurella, doing about 3 or 4 step overs, and then, trying to get across the box. So it looks like a player for an 18-year-old young Brazilian player. Again, we've also got to take into the fact that he's going to be making a move to a brand new country. He just doesn't look shot for confidence. It wasn't a very emotional game for him. Of course, he's been at Palmeiras for his whole career. It is an important part of him. So the celebration, I sort of expected that. Of course, he's gonna, celebrate him scoring. So I have no problem with what he did. No problem that how he celebrated and the emotion that he showed, of course. But what I do want to say is Estevao coming into us next season, please do that for us, and I'm pretty sure he will. But it was a game that was riddled with moments of magic from quite a few individual players, and one of them being that we have talked about quite a few times that we want him to come back to his, what we have seen and what we have gone to expect from him over the last couple of seasons, and that's Cole Palmer. And I thought yesterday in this game he showed up. He showed up in terms of his technical ability, the movement of his ball. He had the confidence to just tuck that ball into the bottom left-hand corner, not smashing it, just caressing it beautifully into that corner while shoving off a player, doing a nice 180 turn. I mean, we've got to talk about the Liam Delap run that opened up that space for him. That's a striker run. What strikers do, they make the runs for themselves to try and get a goal. But if they can't, what they do need to do is use their runs to create space for the likes of the other players that are playing in and behind them to allow them into more, attacking or shooting positions. And that's what he did yesterday. That run across the back line opened up that space to allow Palmer to have that little turn to then slot it nice and easy into that bottom corner. And on the whole, it was quite a controlled, structured performance from Chelsea. Of course, in natural Chelsea fashion, we were never going to make it easy. We were always going to concede to make it a little bit tougher because, they just like to make us have our hearts in our mouth for most of the game. But what was good to see is, and what has developed over time, is we're starting to get that bit of grit between our teeth. We're starting to see out games. We don't look so feeble when we go behind and, expecting us to then go on and lose, which happened quite a lot in last season and a little bit under Poch that, we'd have this whole dominant period, but then the moment we would go behind or be on the back foot, it just sort of fell apart from there and it got worse and worse and we conceded more and more. And when we played Flamengo, sort of a week ago, and we obviously let that one slip, I was hoping that was just, it was just an off game and it wasn't going to be the start of us slipping back into that shape or form where we're going to let games go if we concede or if we lose a foothold in the game. But it seems to just be a one-off. I think we are starting to build up now with getting top four, winning the Conference League. We're building up that confidence, that grit in these players. And to be fair, we've brought in quite a few fiery individuals. I mean, Enzo is now shining a bit more. Andre Santos, another player who I thought had quite a good game yesterday, and we've got to understand that of course he's not going to be perfect. He was thrown into the starting 11 last minute. Now the starting 11, I fully expected Maresca to go with the Reece James experiment again, being that there was going to be no Lavia, there was going to be no Caicedo. I expected Maresca to go because he just feels comfortable with this. I get that. I don't like it. I don't want to see it, but I get that. And then obviously we had the news of Reece James picking up the injury in the warm-up, which then led Santos to start the game. But the thing with this is Santos was playing as the lone six, playing the Caicedo role, which Enzo has publicly stated he doesn't see as his role. He sees him more as the Enzo Fernandez role. But I thought he did superb yesterday in controlling that midfield. Of course, they overran it a few times, but I think they sort of flooded the midfield a little bit and he was left isolated on his own. There's only so much one player can do. But there was one occasion sort of at the end of the game, when legs are tired and you've played almost a full 90 minutes, and he sprinted from the halfway line, tracked to player all the way to the edge of the box, slide tackle straight in, took that ball out, and it's just as good as a goal to see a player with that grit, that determination, and again how young he is to show he's not going to give up on anything and to full sprint back to win that ball. It was brilliant to see. And there were quite a few players that really stepped up when we needed it. And we spoke about this in quite a few videos that we can't expect to coast through games. And, we are going to come up against tougher teams now. And these bigger players are going to need to step up. And I thought they did that yesterday from minute one all the way to minute 90. And of course, there was that slight lapse in concentration in the second half where we conceded that goal, but we composed ourselves, got ourselves centered again, switched back on and got the second goal. And there seems to be quite a togetherness, a bond building within this group of players. And even in some of the new players that have come in, I want to talk about João Pedro. I thought for a debut, the only thing he didn't do was score a goal, but he did everything else right. He worked hard. The fact that he's only been with the team for 48 hours, I think maybe 2 training sessions, and let's be honest, because of the extensive long period the previous game took where we went into, that 2-hour break and into extra time, the training sessions weren't going to be intense, and it wasn't like João Pedro was going to go into these training sessions and it was going to be straight in, super intense, embed him in really quickly. It was light training sessions to keep the players as fresh as possible, especially now that there are quite a few injuries coming in. But he went in, he was linking up and making combination with players like he'd been there for a full season. He was picking out passes, he was winning his aerial drills. The one occasion where the ball looked like it was going out for a goal kick, it was just bouncing. The defender had his body in front of the ball. It didn't, he had no right to get to that ball, and he wiggled his way around the defender, kept that ball in, and produced a cross and produced something out of absolutely nothing. And he come on and he did look, again, early days, first time we've seen him on the pitch, but the way that he sort of the way that he just embedded into the squad, was linking up with players, was creating chances. He could have had a goal or two in this fixture. The Gusto cross that went in, and then obviously the shot right at the end of the game that the keeper saved. He looks quite special in terms of what he's going to bring. I think he will bring something very, very different compared to our other two strikers that we currently have. Talking about the other strikers, the other player that was on the pitch today, Liam Delap. Again, I think he was a bit missing in this game. Apart from the run that he made to open up that space for Cole Palmer, he did spend more time today, I think, sort of getting involved in fights. He got himself a yellow, so now going to miss the semi-finals, which is not, it's not great for us. But we do have Nicholas Jackson back now, and we've also got João Pedro, so we've got options to compensate for that. But what I don't want him to start doing is, we've already got one striker that has a discipline issue, picking up loads of yellow cards, picking up red cards. We don't want to lead in to having another striker like that, because then we're going to be down two players quite often in the league next season. And again, Delap is young, same as Jackson, but he is younger than Jackson. He's going to learn that he can't do exactly what he's doing at the moment. I mean, the one indication, he's literally just barged straight into a player, no ball around, nothing, just barged straight into him. And I think that was the occasion that got him the yellow card. So he just needs to tone it down. It's walking that fine line between being aggressive, being an absolute menace, taking it a little bit too far, getting yourself needless yellow cards that could potentially lead to reds, or accumulating enough yellow cards like he has to now be suspended for the next fixture. So it is an area of his game that he does need to work on. But other than that, he wasn't really involved in this game. There was a dramatic difference when João Pedro came on, and he was a lot more involved. And don't get me wrong, it's still early days for Liam Delap. I still think he's going to be a quality signing for us. Again, he's young. He just needs to improve in a few areas, and the more time being with the squad, he will do that. And with the constant games coming through, he's also coming back of a long season. A good rest, recuperate, come back, and it'll be switched on. And we're going to have quite a competitive front line next season, which is lovely to see, especially if all three of them are going to compete for the same spot. It's going to breed some really, really healthy competition throughout this team. Another player that I thought had a really good game, and I want to big this one up a little bit more than the others because of the circumstances around not just the game, but experiences outside of the game. Of course, we had the tragic news of Diogo Jota and his brother that passed on Thursday, and one of the players in our squad, in Pedro Neto, his compatriot, his teammate, his good friend, he was given the option to take compassionate leave, to take the time for himself to mourn the death of his close friends. But he didn't do that. He chose to play this match, and there wasn't an ounce of his game missing today. I thought he was superb. The mental strength and fortitude that he showed to not only go out on that pitch, but to produce such a great display. I mean, in the first 10 minutes or so, he was taking people on, he was skinning people down the ride, putting, some great crosses in and creating these really good opportunities. He looked like a player that had an extra fire in his belly, and of course that fire is fueled by such sad news, but he used it in such a positive way, and not to of course he's fully in his right to go and mourn his friend, and I wouldn't have held that against him at all if he was to miss this fixture. But the character that he's shown to go out on that pitch today is it's something that is very rare, and it's special. The respect that I have now got for Pedro Neto and for what he did and achieved yesterday under that immense emotional drain is sublime. And I want to just say, Pedro Neto, well done, mate. That was superb performance, and I really appreciate you putting yourself on the line there in the emotional state that you were in, and to still produce such a high level of performance. So well done to you. It was brilliant. But look, I want to wrap it up here with the most important positive that's come out of this fixture. We're through. We're through to the semis. We've got a reunion with Thiago Silva awaiting for us in the semi-finals. And I'm not going to lie, guys, I've got a feeling that this trophy, this tournament, is ours to win. With the way things have fallen into our favour, the favourable draws that we've been given, you know, how we've pulled together, the grit and determination to win, and the performances we put on display in the last two fixtures under the circumstances, especially in the Benfica game and yesterday's game, just to show that grit and determination to get over the line and not let it slip. You know, it may be me just being a fool, being too emotional because, you know, we've just won the game to get us into the semis, but I don't care. I'm going to dream. And I believe that we are going to win this, and we're going to bring this cup home, and we're going to be the first team to win this Club World Cup, and we're going to get that gold badge on our shirt for the next 4 years. Now, if you're enjoying the content, guys, please hit that like button, drop a comment below. Feedback is greatly appreciated. I am taking steps to improve the quality of the content with the audio. I'm, upgrading equipment. I had a video prepared yesterday for the preview for the game, but the audio bugged out on 3 separate occasions, and eventually I just gave up. Uh, I can say that I threw a few things around the room. Come the third time, it didn't work. So I am making steps to improve it, and I hope that you can see that. But your feedback is greatly appreciated. So for now, take care of yourself, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.